close your eyes and let your thoughts drift far away from today, beyond your room, beyond the noise of our age, to a small, quiet village nestled between rolling hills and deep green woods. Imagine a time of stone cottages and thatched roofs, where smoke drifts gently from morning hearths and cobbled lanes wind like sleepy rivers through the heart of the town. It is early morning. The sun has barely risen, its light a soft wash of gold, spilling over fields still beaded with dew. A cockerel crows somewhere beyond the houses. The distant clink of a blacksmith's hammer echoes faintly, slow and rhythmic as a heartbeat. And there, in the center of this humble village, stands a small timbered workshop. Its walls are dark with age, beams weathered smooth by years of wind and rain. Above the heavy wooden door hangs a simple sign carved long ago: a spoon, a bowl, and a small horse, the mark of the woodcarver. Step closer. Feel the worn cobbles underfoot. Smell the mingling scents of fresh bread from the baker, damp earth, and faint sweet shavings of pine. Let us push open the door. It creaks softly on iron hinges, and step inside. The workshop greets us with its quiet warmth. A single window, small and square, is shuttered still against the morning chill. Dust floats lazily in the air, catching glints of light that leak around the shutters. It is here that we meet the woodcarver. An old man, shoulders slightly stooped from decades bent over the workbench. His hair, once dark, is now streaked with silver, and a neat gray beard frames a face lined by years, but softened by kindness. Before the day's labor begins, he follows a simple ritual. He stands, still and silent, before the bench, hands resting lightly on the worn surface. For a moment, he closes his eyes, breathing in the familiar scent of wood, oil, and wax. Each breath deep and calm, grounding him in the day ahead. Slowly, he steps to the window and unbars the shutters. They open with a soft clatter, and golden morning light spills into the room, chasing away the last shadows of night. The light reveals the quiet treasures of this place. Shelves lined with bowls, spoons, and small carved animals, each shaped by careful hands. Bundles of rough-cut wood, some pale as honey, some rich and dark as chestnut. And the bench itself, its surface scarred with countless knife marks and smooth patches worn by resting hands. The woodcarver's tools are laid out before him. Knives of different shapes, their handles polished by years of use. Curved gouges for hollowing bowls. Small chisels for delicate lines. A hand drill for tiny holes. He picks up each one, checking the edge with the pad of his thumb. Not enough to cut, just to feel the keenness. If a blade needs it, he draws it slowly across a leather strop, back and forth in an unhurried rhythm. The rasp of steel against leather is soft, steady, almost like breathing. Each tool, once ready, is laid carefully back in its place. Now comes the quiet choosing of the day's first work. In the corner, stacked neatly, are small logs and blocks: oak, beech, ash, alder. His hand hovers over them, considering each in turn. Oak, with its stubborn grain and deep strength. Beech, smooth and pale, willing to shape. Ash, light but tough, ideal for spoons that will last. Today, his fingers settle on a small block of oak. rough-barked and still fragrant from the forest. He turns it over in his hands, studying the grain, the subtle curves, the hidden lines beneath the bark. To some, it might look like nothing, a chunk of wood. But to him, it holds a promise, a shape waiting to be revealed, if only he listens carefully enough. He places the block gently on the workbench, as one might place bread on a table, not roughly, but with quiet respect. The old man rolls back the sleeves of his tunic, revealing strong forearms traced with pale scars, marks of a life spent carving. He takes up his knife, its blade glinting in the morning light, and sets the point gently against the wood. Then, with a small breath, he begins. The blade moves slowly, deliberately. Thin curls of oak peel away, falling to the bench and gathering in soft, spiraled piles. The workshop, so quiet moments before, fills with the gentle whisper of steel against grain, a sound as calming as rain on a roof. Outside, the village wakes further. Children laugh somewhere in the lane. A cart rattles over cobbles. The faint call of the baker hawking fresh loaves drifts in. Yet inside, the woodcarver's world is smaller, slower. Blade, wood, breath, a rhythm as steady as a heartbeat. As the sun rises higher, its light deepens from pale gold to warm amber. The beams fall across the bench, painting bright stripes that shift as the day moves on. The old man pauses now and then, leaning back, wiping his brow with the back of his sleeve. His eyes drift to the shelves where finished pieces rest. A bowl with a softly rounded lip, a spoon whose handle curves like a river bend, a tiny horse, its mane frozen in motion. Each holds a memory. Some were made for villagers long gone. Others were carved simply because the shape called to him. In the quiet, he remembers faces. A young mother smiling shyly as she chose a rattle for her baby. A traveling monk who bought a small cross traced with simple lines. A child with wide eyes who pressed a carved cat to her cheek, whispering thanks. These memories warm him more deeply than the morning sun. To him, each type of wood has a character, a voice. Oak is stubborn but strong, with a smell of earth and rain. Beech is softer, almost creamy under the blade, with a gentle warmth. Ash is springy, quick to shape, but watchful for hidden knots. As his knife moves, he listens not only with ears, but with fingertips. The grain speaks in tiny catches and smooth glides. A knot, unseen, reveals itself in a sudden resistance. A patch of softer heartwood whispers a curve to follow. He does not force the shape, but guides it, discovering rather than commanding. Though he works alone, the workshop is not truly empty. On a high beam rests a small brown sparrow, come to visit each morning, pecking at stray wood shavings. Spiders spin their webs in corners, catching dust that drifts lazily in the light. From the hearth in the far corner, the faint scent of yesterday's fire lingers, mixed with beeswax and oil. Even the tools feel like quiet companions, each with its own weight, its own familiar feel. At mid-morning, he sets aside the knife, flexing his stiff fingers. He steps to the doorway, leaning on the frame, and looks out over the square. A neighbor leads a goat past, nodding in greeting. The blacksmith's apprentice carries a bucket of water, face flushed from the forge. Pigeons coo and strut between the stones, chasing crumbs. The old man watches, breathing in the morning air, cool still despite the rising sun. Beyond the roofs, fields stretch away, mist lifting slowly to reveal neat rows of cabbages, barley, and beans. A small river, silver in the sun, winds through the green. He takes this moment every day, not to count the hours lost to watching, but to remind himself the world beyond the bench is part of his craft too. It is for these neighbors, this place, that he carves. He returns inside, refreshed. The block of oak has begun to reveal its hidden form, the rough outline of a small horse, mane flowing, legs bent as if in mid-gallop. Now come the finer cuts, slower, more careful. He changes knives, taking up one with a narrower blade, perfect for delicate lines. Each stroke now removes less than a sliver. Each choice of angle and depth shapes the horse's character, bold or gentle, spirited or calm. Time slips away unnoticed. The outside sounds become distant, as though the workshop itself breathes around him, holding him in quiet focus. At last, the sun stands high, spilling bright light through the window. The horse is still unfinished, its eyes yet uncarved, its tail still rough. But the old man knows when to stop, not from haste, but from care. He wipes the blade, sets it gently on the bench, and brushes the shavings into a low basket at his feet. Hands resting on the worn wood, he looks over his work and feels, not pride exactly, but a quiet contentment. The morning is done. Ahead lies the slow turning of afternoon. More carving, quiet visits from neighbors, the steady rhythm of a craft practiced not for fame or fortune, but for the simple, deep satisfaction of shaping what the forest offers. And for now that is enough. The old woodcarver wipes his hands on a cloth, brushing away the last traces of fine oak dust from his palms. Outside, the bell in the stone church tower chimes softly, not the great midday peal, but the smaller, gentler note that marks the hour between breakfast and noon. In the village, this is when the square is most alive. Women come from the bakery, baskets warm with new bread. Men finish tending to animals and gather to trade a quiet word. Children dart between stalls, their laughter echoing off stone walls. Inside the workshop, the woodcarver feels this life drift in through the open door. It doesn't interrupt his work. It becomes part of it, like the grain lines that run unseen through the heart of a block of ash or beech. The first visitor of the morning steps through the doorway. A farmer, broad-shouldered, face browned by sun and wind, wearing a rough wool tunic patched at the elbows. He carries a simple spoon, cracked down the bowl. "Morning to you," the farmer says, voice low and kind. The woodcarver nods in greeting, smiling softly. The farmer turns the spoon over in his calloused hands, explaining how it split while stirring yesterday's porridge. The woodcarver takes the spoon gently, feeling its weight. It is ash, light, springy, good for stirring thick stews and porridge. He turns it over, running a thumb along the crack. Not quite beyond repair, he thinks. A new one, he says quietly. Stronger. I have a piece of ash well seasoned. The farmer nods, grateful. They speak little more. Words aren't needed. The woodcarver gestures for the farmer to follow, and together they step to the corner where rough-cut blanks of wood are kept. He selects a length of ash, pale and smooth, with a soft sheen in the morning light. The farmer watches, brow furrowed, not in worry, but in focus, as though witnessing the first step of something quietly sacred. Tomorrow, the woodcarver says softly, it will be ready. The farmer smiles, a slow, genuine curve of weathered lips. You have my thanks, he murmurs, pressing a coin into the woodcarver's palm, warm from being held. As the farmer steps out into the square again, the woodcarver watches him pause to speak to neighbors, the broken spoon now hanging forgotten at his belt, soon to be replaced by something new. Not long after, another figure appears, smaller, shoulders narrow, hair cropped short and uneven. A boy, perhaps 12, dressed in a tunic too big for his frame, sandals dusty from walking. Good morning, master, the boy says, voice both nervous and eager. He carries nothing, but his eyes dart around the workshop, wide and hungry for detail. The knives on the bench, the shapes on the shelves, the soft spiral shavings curled on the floor. The woodcarver nods in greeting, stepping aside to let the boy see more. You carve? The old man asks. The boy shakes his head quickly. No, sir, but I want to learn. My father says I have quick hands. His words come out in a rush, like water spilling from a bucket. The woodcarver studies the boy, the rawness of youth, the brightness of curiosity not yet dimmed by failure. He reaches for a small scrap of soft lime wood, pale and fine-grained, easy to carve. Try, he offers, handing the boy a small, blunt knife. The boy's fingers tremble as he takes it. He holds it awkwardly at first, then corrects his grip, copying what he's seen. The first shavings peel away, pale ribbons falling to the bench. The cut is uneven, but the line is true enough. Good, the woodcarver murmurs. Slow. Let the blade do the work. They speak little after that. The workshop becomes quiet, broken only by the soft scrape of the boy's knife, the measured breaths of concentration, and the distant noises of the village outside. After a time, the boy sets down the wood, the beginnings of something that might become a small fish, or perhaps a simple wedge. He looks up, shy pride mixing with embarrassment. Keep, the woodcarver says, nodding. The boy's face brightens. and he slips the small carving into his pocket like treasure. "Come again," the woodcarver adds gently. The boy nods, mouth open in a smile too wide to hide, and slips out into the brightness beyond the doorway. The woodcarver watches him go, the empty space he leaves behind filled with quiet hope. The morning sun climbs higher, painting the workshop in warmer tones. Dust motes swirl in lazy circles where the light meets shadow. A third visitor arrives, an older woman, stooped and thin, her hair hidden under a faded linen coif. She carries an old spindle, its tip worn smooth, the whorl chipped. "It has served me many years," she says, voice raspy with age. The woodcarver takes the spindle, turning it gently in his hands. "Too worn," he murmurs. "A new one." She nods, gaze dropping, fingers worrying the edge of her shawl. "My daughter's daughter will need it," she whispers. "Better it be made now." The woodcarver leads her to a shelf where lengths of apple wood rest, pale, fine-grained, perfect for spindles. Apple wood keeps the thread smooth, he explains, though she knows this well. It is ritual more than lesson. She traces the wood with thin fingers, nodding. "Will it be ready by the next market?" she asks. "It will," he assures. Her eyes lift, and for a moment, the lines on her face soften, revealing the young woman she once was. Hands deft at spinning, laughing in the company of others. She leaves slowly, her pace deliberate, the promise of the new spindle carried silently beside her. After each visitor departs, the workshop feels different. Not emptier, but changed, as though each person leaves behind a thread, woven into the quiet fabric of the place. The woodcarver pauses to tidy his bench, gathering loose shavings into the basket. He looks over the unfinished horse on the bench, the promised spoon for the farmer, the spindle-to-be resting beside them. Each piece is more than just wood. They hold small stories. A farmer's meal, a child's lesson, a grandmother's craft passed to another generation. The old man thinks about how these stories outlive even the carver himself. Hands tire, the body slows, but the spoon will stir porridge long after his own morning meal is forgotten. The spindle will twist wool into thread years after his final breath. In this, there is comfort, a quiet legacy carried not in name, but in shape and use. Before the bell marks the approach of noon, a final visitor comes. A woman middle-aged, wearing a dress stained with dye, threads clinging to the hem. She carries a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "Morning, master," she says, setting the bundle gently on the bench. Inside are broken heddle rods, slender, polished sticks that guide threads on a loom. "The new loom works well," she explains, "but these were too old, snapped like dry twigs." The woodcarver picks them up, turning them slowly. They are worn smooth from years of the weaver's hands guiding them. "Beech," he says softly. or birch? Beech, she answers, light, but not brittle. I have some, he nods. He leads her to the stack, and together they choose lengths that are straight, fine-grained, and free from knots. The weaver's hands are quick and practiced, testing each for balance and weight. They speak of the loom, of the cloth she plans to weave, simple undyed wool, then perhaps a length of red cloth for the coming feast day. As they talk, the workshop feels less like a shop, more like the heart of a small community, where craft meets craft, and quiet understanding replaces hurried trade. The new rods by tomorrow? She asks. They will be ready, he promises. She smiles, not wide, but real, and lifts her bundle of broken rods. They served long enough, she says, almost to herself. Then she steps out, leaving the workshop scented faintly of wool and dye. At last, the old woodcarver returns to the doorway. The morning has waned, the sun now high and strong, casting sharper shadows across the square. He leans against the doorframe, feeling the rough grain of the timber under his palm. Children run past, chasing each other with peals of laughter. A neighbor calls out a greeting, and he raises a hand in answer. For a few moments, he simply watches. The square is small, but full of life. Vendors setting out baskets of herbs, chickens scratching in corners, pigeons settling on warm roof tiles. Above, the clouds drift slowly, unhurried, their shadows crawling across the tiled roofs and sunlit cobbles. The old man closes his eyes, breathing in the mixed scents. Fresh bread, warm stone, faint smoke from a distant hearth. And beneath it all, always, the quiet tang of wood dust that clings to his tunic. Stepping back inside, the change in light is gentle, the workshop cooler, the air still. On the bench wait the morning's promises, the new spoon for the farmer, the spindle for the elder, the heddle rods for the weaver, each task small in the world's eyes, yet together they shape the quiet heartbeat of the village. The woodcarver's hands, though older now, remain sure. He picks up the small carving knife again, its handle warm from the morning sun. In the slow hours before midday, he will turn rough wood into shapes that fit a neighbor's need, shapes as humble and honest as the people who come to his door. Outside, the bell begins to toll. Soft, deliberate notes counting out the approach of noon. Inside, the knife meets wood once more. And so, the morning ends not in haste, but in calm continuation. The quiet work of shaping, the soft rhythm of breath and blade, and the unspoken promise that as long as the wood waits, his hands will answer. The church bell in the stone tower finishes its slow toll, each note rolling through the village and then dissolving into stillness. For a moment, the whole square feels paused. Even the pigeons seem to quiet, and the children's shouts drift away on the summer breeze. Inside the woodcarver's workshop, that soft silence settles like a comforting blanket. The old man breathes in deeply, letting the quiet fill him, then lets it go. Around him, familiar things wait. The unfinished horse on the bench, the new spoon's block of ash, the spindle to be, and the heddle rods lying neatly in a row. Each piece of work is simple on its own, but together they form something like prayer, a slow, steady devotion offered to the shape hidden within each block of wood. He takes up the carving knife again, its blade narrow and keen, the handle darkened by years of sweat and oil. The spoon comes first. He turns the small ash block over in his hand, studying the grain that runs through it. Grain is like memory, he thinks, unseen from a distance, but clear under close, patient eyes. With the first careful cuts, the bowl of the spoon begins to appear, not through force, but through release. The blade doesn't impose shape. It reveals what the wood has been whispering all along. Outside, village life continues, softened by the thick walls of the workshop. A dog barks at a passing cart. The rhythmic strike of the blacksmith's hammer sounds, now louder, now fading. But here at the bench, time slows. Each cut is deliberate, guided as much by feel as by sight. He tilts the knife slightly to follow a curve. A small curl of pale wood peels away, falling to join the others on the floor. In the pattern of the grain, the curve of the bowl finds its natural depth, neither too shallow to hold, nor too deep to weaken the spoon. This part of the work, he knows, can't be rushed. Once the bowl is roughed out, the handle awaits, long enough to feel balanced in the hand, slender, but with strength to endure years of stirring. The old man draws the knife down its length, each stroke small, controlled. A rhythm emerges. Draw, lift, turn the piece. Draw, lift, turn. The sound is gentle, the hush of blade against grain, the faint scrape where a knot surprises him. Now and then, the knife snags slightly, a reminder to slow, to adjust the angle. Wood teaches patience. A hurried cut splits the grain, ruins the work of an hour. A careful cut, guided by the eye and steadied by the breath, brings the shape closer to life. As the afternoon light shifts, sunbeams angle lower through the window, turning the floating wood dust into thin, glowing threads. The old man pauses, knife resting on the bench, and watches the dust dance. Tiny fragments, born of his labor, catching the golden light as they drift and settle. In these small moments, he finds a quiet contentment, a pause that feels as necessary as the work itself. He reaches for a small, rough cloth, wiping the spoon clean of shavings. Its shape is there now, a bowl that curves gently, a handle that feels right under his fingers, not finished, but begun. He places it gently beside the unfinished horse, the spindle to be, and the heddle rods. Next, the small horse calls to him. Its form already rough-shaped from the morning's work, the arch of the neck, the bend of the legs, the suggestion of flowing mane. The woodcarver turns it over slowly, tracing lines with his thumb. Now come the finer cuts, defining the curve of the belly, the muscles of the legs, the hollow beneath the jaw. He picks up a narrower knife, blade thin and precise. The first cut deepens the line where the mane meets the neck. The next smooths the curve of the flank. Outside, voices drift past the open door, a pair of neighbors speaking softly, their words blurred by distance. He barely hears them. The horse, though small enough to fit in a child's palm, holds his whole attention. It's not just a toy, he thinks. To the child who will hold it, it will run across tabletops, leap over imagined rivers, charge into battles of straw and string. So he carves the lines true, the legs balanced as though caught mid-step. Now and then, the grain surprises him. A hidden knot resists the blade. A patch of softer heartwood crumbles under a too-deep cut. The woodcarver doesn't curse, nor does he sigh. He simply pauses. Turning the piece in his hand, he studies the fault. A new line appears in his mind. A slight change of curve, a narrower leg, a mane swept differently. Adaptation becomes design. So the work continues, shaped as much by imperfection as by plan. These small setbacks do not frustrate him. After so many years, he knows the wood speaks, and the craftsman's task is to listen. As his knife traces the mane, the old man's thoughts drift. He remembers the first horse he ever carved, not in this workshop, but by the hearth of his childhood home. He was no older than the boy who visited that morning. His father, a carter, had handed him a small block of scrap wood and a dull knife. The shape was crude, the legs thick and awkward, the head little more than a block. Yet when he finished, the horse had felt alive in his small hand. He kept it for years, long after he learned to carve finer ones. It broke eventually, as toys do, but the memory remains, the quiet pride of shaping something from nothing, the gentle approval in his father's eyes. Even now, decades later, each new horse he carves carries a little of that first one. Outside, the village breathes around him. A rooster crows, though it's long past dawn. Distant laughter rises and falls. The forge's bellows hiss, followed by the brief roar of flames. A cart rattles past, wheels bumping over the uneven stones. These sounds do not distract him. They are as familiar, as comforting, as the rhythm of the knife in his hand. They remind him he is part of something larger, a village where each person's craft supports another. The baker bakes, the blacksmith shapes iron, the weaver threads cloth, and he carves, simple, steady, small, yet needed. Setting aside the horse for now, he turns to the heddle rods promised to the weaver. These must be smooth and true. A single rough edge can catch and fray the threads, ruining hours of work. He chooses a spoke shave, a small tool with a flat blade set between two handles. Drawing it along the length of the rod, he shaves the wood in thin, curling ribbons. The motion is quiet, almost musical. Scrape, lift, turn. He tests each rod by rolling it across the bench. It must not wobble, must lie straight and true. When satisfied, he takes a piece of fine sanded cloth and polishes each rod until it gleams softly in the afternoon light. He thinks of the weaver's loom, threads strung like sunbeams, cloth growing row by row, shaped by patient hands. His rods will guide those threads. And in that thought, he finds quiet satisfaction. Next, the spindle. He picks up the piece of apple wood chosen with the elderly woman that morning. Apple is a pleasure to carve, close-grained, subtly sweet-smelling. He begins by shaping the shaft, slender, tapering to a fine point. Each cut must be careful. Too much taken at once, and the spindle will be weak. He turns it slowly in his hand, sighting along its length to check for curves or warps. Then comes the whirl, a small disc, weighted just enough to keep the spindle spinning smoothly. He drills a tiny hole, fits the shaft through, and tests its balance with a gentle flick of the fingers. The spindle turns, whirling in a blur, then slows, still upright. A good start. Time passes unnoticed. The sun, once bright at the window, softens to a gentler gold. Shadows stretch across the workshop floor, touching the pile of wood shavings and the neat rows of finished work. The woodcarver pauses to stretch his back, feeling the familiar pull in tired muscles. He steps to the doorway again, leaning against the frame. Children, dusty and laughing, run past, chased by a small brown dog. Two neighbors speak quietly near the well, buckets at their feet. The forge's glow flickers in the distance, red against the growing dusk. Returning inside, the old man sets down his tools and opens a small cloth bundle brought from home. Bread, hard but filling, a wedge of sharp cheese, an apple bruised but sweet. He eats slowly, savoring each bite. Between mouthfuls, he turns his eyes to the shelves. Finished pieces wait there, spoons, bowls, small toys. Each holds a story, a need met, a promise kept. He thinks again of the boy from the morning, of the quiet pride in that first awkward carving. Perhaps, he thinks, it is not only the shape of wood that matters, but the shape it gives to a life. Meal finished, he wipes crumbs from the bench, lifts the carving knife once more. The horse needs its eyes now, small, careful cuts that will give it life. He leans closer, breath steady. One cut, then another. The eyes appear, not painted on, but formed by shadow and curve. They are simple, yet in them, the horse seems to wake. He runs a thumb along the mane, smoothing tiny ridges, then sets it gently beside the spoon, the spindle, the heddle rods. The light in the workshop softens, turning warm and rich. Shavings on the floor catch the gold, glowing like curled autumn leaves. Dust hangs in the still air, drifting slowly. The knife rests on the bench. The old man looks over his work, a spoon almost ready for finishing, a horse now alive under his fingers, a spindle balanced and true, heddle rods smooth and straight. Each is humble, none will bear his name, yet each will live in other hands, serving quietly, becoming part of other stories. In this, he finds contentment deeper than pride. Outside, the bell will soon mark the coming evening. Inside, the woodcarver sits quietly, hands folded, eyes on the bench. The day's work is not done. There is always more to carve, to shape, to discover. Yet for now, there is pause. The breath in his chest, the faint ache in his hands, the gentle light in the workshop, all part of the same quiet rhythm. Blade and grain, cut and curve, promise and making, and always the simple, enduring hope that what he shapes in wood will outlast the day, carrying a little warmth, a little usefulness into tomorrow. The sun hangs high yet mellow, no longer as fierce as midday, but still warm where it touches the stone of the square. Inside the workshop, the woodcarver pauses, setting aside his tools. He wipes a hand across his brow, leaving a faint smudge of wood dust on his sleeve. This hour, between the bell at noon and the slow drift toward evening, has always felt softer to him. It is when the village breathes differently, not rushing to begin the day, nor yet hurrying to finish it. It is when stories come easiest, whispered by neighbors, carried by the breeze, or rising quietly from memory. The woodcarver leans over the unfinished spoon, tracing the curve of the bowl with a fingertip. As the blade shaves away small curls of ash, his mind drifts. The grain itself seems to whisper, not only of wind and rain and years of slow growth in some quiet grove, but also of laughter in the square, arguments by the well, songs rising from the tavern. The wood holds everything, if you know how to listen. And the woodcarver has listened, year after year, as the same stories return in new shapes. He remembers the weaver, who that very morning ordered new heddle rods. Her daughter is soon to marry, and the mother spoke quietly of weaving red cloth for the feast day. Red dye is costly, drawn from crushed madder roots and careful boiling. He knows the daughter, a quiet young woman with quick hands, always stopping to watch his carving through the open door as she carries dyed wool back from the river. The feast will bring music and laughter to the square, lanterns hung from windows, children running barefoot even after dusk. For a few short hours, the village will feel brighter than the world beyond. The woodcarver has seen many such feasts, year after year. Always the same, yet always different. New faces, new stories layered atop old ones, like thin shavings over ancient grain. As he carves, his thoughts wander further, to older stories still whispered at firesides. The legend of Saint Gerlon, patron of woodcutters and carvers. It is said Gerlan once lived alone in the great forest beyond the hills. He carved figures of saints from fallen branches, never cutting living wood. One winter, a great storm toppled half the forest, and villagers blamed the carvers and sawyers. Gerlan, so the story goes, spoke gently to the villagers, asking forgiveness on behalf of all who took wood for warmth or craft. He prayed among the fallen trunks, and by spring, new saplings sprang up, straighter and taller than before. Since then, old carvers like him make the sign of Gerlan before the first cut of the day, not out of fear, but quiet respect for what the wood offers. The old man touches the carved medallion that hangs on a thin leather cord at his neck, a small figure, rough and worn smooth by years of fingertips, a quiet promise between craftsman and forest. From the open door come faint voices drifting in on warm air. Two neighbors stand near the well, pitchers balanced on hips, speaking of small things that feel large here. The price of grain at the next market, a hen gone missing, the smith's apprentice who stayed too late at the tavern. Such stories change daily, as shifting as the patterns in wood grain. But they carry the same notes, worry softened by shared understanding, small joys brightened when spoken aloud. In these voices, the woodcarver hears the steady pulse of village life, and though he carves alone, he never feels apart from it. Years ago, when he was younger, the baker's wife brought him a simple request, a carved bread stamp, a small round of wood carved with a swirl and a sunburst pressed onto each loaf before baking. He remembers her hands, flour dusted, broad from kneading dough daily. A small thing, she had said, smiling. Yet when the stamp was done, she held it as though it were gold. For years afterward, every round loaf that came from her oven bore that sunburst. Even now, though the baker's wife has passed, her daughter uses the same stamp. Bread breaks quickly, eaten in a day. But the mark remains, renewed loaf after loaf, morning after morning. In that, he thinks, is a kind of quiet immortality. Once, not so long ago, a traveling merchant stopped at his door. With him came his young son, weary from the road, dust on his cheeks. The merchant spoke of trade, bowls and spoons to carry to another town. But the boy's gaze never left the shelf of small wooden animals. The woodcarver watched the boy's eyes widen at a tiny dog, its tail curled in a playful arc. Before the merchant left, the old man pressed the toy into the boy's small hand. "For your road," he said simply. The father offered coin, but the woodcarver shook his head. The boy's smile was thanks enough. A small figure, whittled in a quiet hour, now carried far beyond the village. Perhaps the dog still rides in a dusty pack or rests in some distant town. Even small things, he thinks, travel farther than their maker. In the pause between tasks, he steps to the doorway again. Beyond the square, the fields stretch golden and green, dotted with bent backs and wide straw hats. The farmer's calls float up, softened by distance. A flock of birds rises suddenly, wheels against the sky, then settles again. He watches the slow rhythm, cut, gather, bind, the bending of bodies in time with the sun. His work, too, follows that rhythm. Morning, rough shaping. Midday, finer cuts. Afternoon, sanding, finishing. Each day, like each field, shaped by patience and care. Beyond the village, hidden by a low rise and a stand of ancient oaks, lies the ruin of a small stone keep. Children still speak of it in whispers, stories of a lady in white who walks its broken walls at dusk, her veil trailing mist behind her. Older villagers recall a lord who once ruled here, stern but fair, remembered for rebuilding the mill after a flood. The woodcarver remembers, as a boy, slipping past the fallen gate, daring himself to climb the crumbling stairs. He recalls moss underfoot, the echo of his breath in empty halls. Now, the keep stands mostly forgotten, yet its stones remain, enduring long after names fade. Wood rots, iron rusts, but stone remembers. And yet, even stone is shaped first, by hand. Among the stories passed down is that of the lantern maker, a woman who lived alone on the edge of the village many years ago. By day, she shaped frames from willow branches. By night, she painted scenes on oiled parchment, stars, saints, and stories from old songs. At festival time, the square glowed with her lanterns. Some said the lanterns burned brighter because she whispered a blessing into each wick. When she passed, the village kept her last lantern alight through one winter, placing it on the church step to guide travelers home. The woodcarver never met her. She died before his time. Yet when he sands the inside of a candle holder, he sometimes hums an old tune that bears her name. Small acts, he thinks, keep the dead alive in the living. Blade and grain teach patience. Stories teach belonging. As he carves, the woodcarver realizes he is not only shaping wood, but carrying stories forward. The horse he carves might gallop through a child's dreams of knights and dragons. The spoon might stir a mother's stew, warming family and guest alike. The spindle will twist raw wool into thread, which in turn becomes cloth, which in turn becomes warmth against winter. And each of these objects will gather its own stories, unknown to him. The bench itself, scarred and worn, holds its own quiet history. Nicks and burns mark mistakes made long ago. Smooth patches where his arms rest daily. Even darker stains, spilled oil, sap, perhaps a drop of blood from a careless slip. The bench remembers every morning of hope, every evening of quiet tiredness. It has outlived apprentices who came and went, seasons of good harvest and years of lean grain. One day, it too will pass to another hand, or fall to dust. But until then, it holds stories silently, like grain lines hidden beneath bark. Sometimes, between tasks, the woodcarver's mind drifts to the forest beyond the furthest fields, a place both feared and respected. Children warned to stay on the paths, hunters who know each clearing by heart. To him, the forest is not only danger, but gift. Each log or branch that finds its way to his bench carries the scent of rain-soaked earth, the hush of leaves in wind, the dark coolness of mossy hollows. He gives thanks quietly, as Saint Gerland taught, that what was alive becomes useful once more. As afternoon drifts slowly toward evening, the woodcarver reflects that stories are like small lamps, simple, flickering, but together they light the village. Each bowl, each spoon, each toy becomes a vessel for memory. A child holds a carved horse, and it carries comfort through dark nights. A baker's bread stamp turns daily work into tradition. A spindle spins wool into thread, connecting grandmother, mother, and child. The craft is not only in shaping wood, but in shaping the quiet faith that tomorrow, these small things will still serve, still warm, still belong. Before turning back to work, he gazes once more out the open door. The square is quieter now. Long shadows stretch from roof to cobble. A dog dozes in the sun. Pigeons settle on warm stone. In the far corner, an old neighbor mends a basket, willow strands creaking under his hands. These sights, so ordinary, are as dear to the woodcarver as the finest grain. Stepping back to the bench, he sets hands to the unfinished horse. The mane needs softening. The legs must be rounded to feel right in a child's grip. His blade moves gently, guided by thought and by memory. Outside, stories continue. New gossip, new laughter, new sorrow. Inside, the woodcarver shapes what small part he can. Quiet witness to the passing day. Blade and breath, grain and story. And in this rhythm, he finds a peace that words can only circle around, but never fully catch. The sun, once high and golden, begins its slow descent toward the western hills. Its rays now fall at an angle, casting long, soft shadows that stretch across the cobbled square and slip through the open door of the woodcarver's workshop. Inside, the light changes color, from the bright white of midday to a warmer, richer gold, deepening the hues of oak and ash, turning dust motes into drifting sparks. The woodcarver pauses to watch them float, carried by the faint breeze that stirs the shavings on the floor. Outside, the square is quieter than before. The laughter of children has faded into occasional echoes. Even the calls of merchants sound softer, more measured, as though the whole village, like the old man himself, is slowing for the day. At the bench, unfinished tasks await. The spoon for the farmer, the horse for the child, the spindle for the elder woman, and the heddle rods for the weaver. They are no longer raw blocks of promise. Now each has form, near completion, needing only the soft, careful finishing that brings wood to life. The old man lifts the carving knife again, its blade catching the slanting sun. He draws it lightly along the edge of the spoon's handle, smoothing away the last unevenness. The spoon feels warm under his fingers, almost as though it has already known fire and broth and the comfort of family meals. He rubs the spoon with a cloth dipped lightly in oil pressed from flax seeds. The pale ash wood darkens under the oil, revealing soft swirls in the grain, lines that catch and guide the eye along the gentle curve of bowl to handle. The smell rises, earthy, sweet, faintly nutty. Holding the spoon at arm's length, he turns it in the light, checking balance and shape. He thinks of the farmer, who will use it in the simple daily ritual of stirring porridge before dawn, as steam drifts upward in the dim kitchen. And perhaps, in the quiet of some early hour, the farmer will pause, just for a breath, and feel the spoon's shape, the smoothness left by another's patient hands. A connection, silent and unseen, but no less real for its quietness. Setting aside the spoon, the old man lifts the small wooden horse. The mane, half finished earlier, now awaits its final lines, deeper cuts near the neck, lighter toward the crest, giving the sense of motion, of life held in stillness. Each stroke of the knife is deliberate, guided as much by memory as by sight. When he was a boy, he thought carving was about forcing wood into shape. Now, in age, he knows it is about revealing what is already there. A too heavy cut dulls the life in the figure. A hesitant cut leaves it unfinished. It is a quiet dance of courage and restraint. The knife work done, the woodcarver takes up a strip of fine sanded cloth, made from worn linen dipped in powdered sandstone. He wraps it around the horse, moving it gently along the curves of neck and flank. A small cloud of fine dust rises, caught in the golden light. The horse grows smoother under his touch. The edges soften, inviting a child's fingers to trace them. He breathes slowly as he works, each motion an echo of breath. The child who receives this horse may never know the old man's name. Yet, when small fingers run along its back, they will feel something of the quiet care shaped into it. Next, he picks up the spindle of apple wood, its shaft slender and straight, its whirl already fitted. He rolls it gently across the bench. It travels true, without wobble. He takes a cloth dabbed with beeswax and rubs it along the shaft, warming the wood under his hand. The spindle gleams faintly, pale gold under the deepening afternoon light. He imagines the elder woman's granddaughter learning to spin beside the hearth, laughter mixing with occasional frustration as the first threads break. But in time, the rhythm will come. Twist, draft, wind. And in that rhythm, she too may come to feel the quiet patience of craft. Finally, the heddle rods, lengths of beech, now smooth and pale. These need no ornament. Their beauty lies in utility. Yet the old man runs his hands along each, seeking the smallest flaw. A burr here. He scrapes it away. A faint ridge. He sands it smooth. They will not bear his mark. But each time the weaver lifts and lowers her heddles, each time the shuttle passes swiftly between, these rods will have done their unseen work, hidden in the loom yet essential. And so, he shapes them with the same care as the finest bowl. The light, now lower still, catches the lines on the woodcarver's hands. Scars, nicks, and deep-set wrinkles, marks of decades spent shaping, smoothing, revealing. He feels the ache in his knuckles more sharply than in years past. Once, his hands were quick and sure, blades moving in swift arcs. Now, each motion carries weight, both of years and of intention. Yet in this slowing, there is also depth. Time spent thinking before cutting. Time spent listening to what the wood offers. A young carver shapes wood. An old one shapes patience into every piece. The woodcarver steps once more to the open door. The square now lies partly in shadow. The rooftops catch the last rich gold of sun. A woman draws water from the well, her bucket dripping on worn stone. Children linger near the steps of the church, voices low as they trade small secrets. Beyond the rooftops, the hills darken first, shadows climbing them like slow water. The breeze brings scents of warm bread cooling on wooden racks, of earth, and faintly, of smoke from distant hearths. He draws in these scents, holding them like a prayer. The smell of bread recalls a morning long ago. His mother at the hearth, drawing a loaf fresh from the oven, crust dark and split. He was a boy then, small hands already whittling scraps of wood into awkward shapes. She turned, smiled, set a crust before him. That warmth remains, undimmed by years. In the falling light, memory feels closer, sharper. Friends once known, now gone. Apprentices grown and moved away. Feasts shared in the square under lantern light. All remain, somewhere between grain and breath. Turning back inside, the old man sees the bench as if newly. The small pile of shavings glowing in the low sun, tools resting where hand set them, finished pieces waiting for dawn. He lifts the horse again, thumb brushing its polished side. Each piece now feels complete, or nearly so. The final work is not in the blade, but in the quiet seeing, noticing what remains too rough, what can be left as it is. In this too lies craft, knowing when to stop. The horse's legs, he notices, are not perfectly even. A small nick marks the base of the spoon's bowl. The spindle's whirl shows a faint ripple in grain. In youth, he might have cursed these flaws. Now, he sees them as proof of hand over machine, of living craft over perfect shape. They are what make each piece its own, not a copy, but a companion to its user. Perfect things, he thinks, often feel cold. It is small flaws that carry warmth. The sun's last rays slip behind the roofs, leaving the workshop in deepening shadow. The old man lights a single beeswax candle, its flame flickering gold against the dark wood. The room feels smaller now, yet cozier. Walls closer, shavings soft underfoot, scent of oil and wax richer. In this circle of light, the day's work rests, waiting, and the woodcarver, weary but content, stands for a long moment, simply looking. Age has brought slowness. That much is true. But it has also brought understanding that what matters is not how many spoons carved, how many toys shaped, but the way each is made. Care cannot be hurried, and though his own days grow fewer, the work continues, in wood, in hands that will hold what he has shaped, and perhaps in the memory of the boy who came that morning, carving his first piece. The farmer will come for the spoon. The elder woman will return for the spindle. The weaver will take up the heddle rods. And perhaps the boy will step again into the workshop, eager hands ready for new lessons. These small promises shape tomorrow before it arrives. They give reason to rise at dawn, to set blade to wood anew. Before dousing the candle, the old man lifts the cloth again, passing it over each finished piece. The wood drinks the last thin coat of oil, grain lines deepening, small details catching the soft flame. A final silent blessing. Then gently, he sets each on the shelf above the bench. Spoon, horse, spindle, rods. Their shapes, once hidden in rough timber, now offered to the world. Outside, stars begin to prick the darkening sky. The square lies quiet. Windows glow faintly. Voices behind them hushed by distance. The bell in the tower will toll soon, marking night's true arrival. In the workshop, the woodcarver leans on the bench, breath slowing. The day, with its tasks and thoughts, drifts toward memory. Yet the work, humble and honest, remains. Shapes of usefulness, shapes of kindness, shaped by quiet hands. Evening falls gently over the village. Shadows, once sharp, blur into softer shapes. The last lines of sunlight fade from the square, leaving it wrapped in cool blue-gray. The woodcarver steps to the door of his workshop. He rests his palm against the doorframe worn smooth by decades of coming and going, eyes tracing the familiar lines of stone and timber across the square. The sky above him softens from deep gold to pale violet, then into the velvet blue of night. From open windows, candlelight flickers, warm and tender against the growing dark. The day's clamor subsides, fewer voices, softer footsteps, an occasional bark of a distant dog. The village feels smaller at this hour, closer, as if the very walls lean inward in quiet conversation. Inside, the single beeswax candle holds a trembling pool of light. The shelves, tools, and carved pieces lie partly hidden in shadow. Only the near side of the bench shines, soft reflections dancing on polished wood. This hour brings a kind of calm that even the slow rhythm of carving cannot. No more cutting, no more shaping, simply seeing, being. The woodcarver sits, back gently curved, hands resting on worn knees, and breathes in the faint scent of oil and warm dust. He knows this quiet so well. It has accompanied him through the decades like an old, patient friend. In the flicker of candlelight, faces return to him. Young hands once guided beside his own. Bright eyes full of hope, laughter, sometimes impatience. He remembers Thomas, strong and quick, eager to prove himself, carving with a boldness that brought both beauty and ruin. Thomas left for the city, chasing the promise of coin and grand commissions. He wonders if Thomas still carves, or if city life turned his hands to other work. And quiet Lena, the miller's daughter, whose hands moved gently, whose small wooden flowers seemed almost alive. She stayed but 2 summers, then married, and soon had children of her own. Did she still pick up a blade now and then, when the children slept and the hearth burned low? Each apprentice carried something of his teaching, but each also taught him that patience cannot be demanded, only discovered, that talent blooms differently in each hand, that letting go is part of shaping. He remembers the first time an apprentice's work surpassed his own, a spoon carved by Lena, lines so light and fluid it seemed grown rather than made. Pride mixed then with a sting of loss. In age, he has come to understand. The craft is not diminished when another hand becomes more skillful. Instead, it endures, travels onward, carried by those younger and bolder. What he teaches outlives him, shaped and reshaped by each new hand. As with wood, the best teaching requires cutting away pride to reveal generosity beneath. The candle's flame bends slightly in a draught. Shadows stretch and memories deepen. He sees his father, broad-shouldered, lifting him to set a first knife in his hand. His mother, flour-dusted, pressing a crust of bread into his palm. The baker's wife, long past now, who smiled warmly when he brought her the bread stamp. Old Marius, the blacksmith, whose laughter once shook the square, voice now silent these many years. They remain, not in stone or iron, but in small gestures, stories told by neighbors, carvings still in use. Wood burns, flesh withers, but kindness and craft ripple outward, unseen, yet real. Outside the square, unseen in the deepening night, fields lie quiet under the first faint gleam of stars. The distant forest darkens to a single shape against the sky. Paths trodden by generations lie empty, waiting for dawn. Though unseen, the woodcarver feels them as part of himself. The wheat rustling in moonlit breeze, the mossy stones of the ruined keep, the narrow footbridge crossing the stream beyond the mill, each a quiet presence, part of the day's wholeness. His hands, resting on his knees, bear stories of their own. Knuckles knotted, skin toughened and lined. Each scar recalls a lesson: the quick slip of a new blade, the burn from an iron pot carelessly brushed, the deep cut that healed slowly in winter. In youth, each wound felt like failure. Now, he sees they were teachers. Pain taught caution, mistakes taught humility, and age has taught the greatest lesson: that perfection is never the goal, only sincerity. The candle burns lower, its pool of wax deepening. Its small, steady flame holds back the night, bright enough for this quiet reflection. The old man watches the flame dance, thinking how much of life resembles it: fragile yet resilient, small yet enough to warm and light the darkness. The spoon, horse, spindle, heddle rods, each is a flame, modest yet meant to bring comfort. The child holding the toy, the weaver guiding threads, the farmer stirring stew, each carries the light forward. When he is gone, and he knows the years ahead are fewer than those behind, what will remain? Not his name, carved nowhere. Not the shop, which may pass to another, but the work, small, useful, shaped by care, and perhaps stories told by those who remember the old woodcarver in the square. He carved spoons that fit your hand just so. His toys never broke, no matter how hard the children played. He taught me to see the grain, not just the wood. That is enough. Through the open window, cooler air drifts in, carrying soft sounds. The clink of dishes washed in a nearby home, low laughter from the tavern, a baby's cry quickly hushed. The bell in the tower tolls once, deep and solemn, marking the hour. In these sounds, the woodcarver feels the pulse of village life continuing, steady as a heartbeat. His workshop is part of it, as are the fields, the forge, the mill. No one part louder or greater, each necessary. His mind drifts back to his earliest memory of carving: a small piece of willow, split from firewood, clumsy hands holding a dull blade. The figure took no true shape, only hinted at a bird. Yet when it was done, crude though it was, he felt something gentle and strange, the joy of coaxing form from formlessness. That spark, lit long ago, has never quite gone out. Even now it burns, quieter perhaps, but steady. He has watched many hands pick up knives after him, apprentices, neighbors, children. Some carve only a little, then set the knife aside. Some find the same quiet joy he once discovered. Craft, he sees now, is not a straight road, but a circle. Receiving, shaping, giving. Each piece carved from wood once living, each object offered to hands not yet known. When the circle turns fully, what was shaped shapes in return. Though the night deepens, his thoughts turn gently to morning. the farmer will come for the spoon. Perhaps the boy will return, bright-eyed, asking to see how the horse was finished. The elder woman will test the balance of the spindle. Small moments, yet they give the coming day its shape. Knowing these quiet promises wait brings peace deeper than rest. At last, the old man steps to the doorway. Overhead, the sky spreads in quiet grandeur, stars sharp and cold against its dark velvet. He makes the sign of Saint Gerlan, a gesture older than memory. Hand to heart, then sky, then back to chest. A prayer not for himself, but for those his work will serve. For strength to shape with care, for patience to accept flaws, for the small flame of craft to remain a light. Returning inside, he sets each tool in its place. Knives laid side by side, blades lightly oiled, spokeshave hung on its hook, cloth folded neatly. The bench, now empty, holds a stillness like held breath. Even the curls of wood on the floor seem to rest, shadows soft around them. Order, even humble, brings a calm that words cannot. Standing in the doorway once more, he feels the day's tiredness settle into his bones, but not heavily. It is the ache of work well done, of hours spent in quiet purpose. He has not carved more than he should, nor less. What was promised is shaped. What remains unfinished waits without complaint. Enough. His hand hovers over the candle's flame, then gently pinches it out. For a breath, smoke rises, curling pale and thin into the night air. The workshop darkens, shapes blending into shadow. Yet the warmth of the day's work lingers. And in the darkness, the old man feels no fear, only a quiet trust that morning will come, and with it, new light, new hands, new shaping. Before closing the door, he turns once more to the bench. Even unseen, he knows what lies there. Spoon, horse, spindle, heddle rods. Each carrying more than shape, carrying thought, memory, care. In this, the day finds its close, not in grand deeds, but in small, sincere acts offered to the world. Morning returns as softly as it left. A pale light seeps over the eastern hills, brushing rooftops with gentle silver before turning them gold. In the square, a rooster calls once, twice, 3 times, the sound clear and hopeful in the cool air. Mist curls low along the worn stones and the quiet fields beyond, thin as gauze, clinging only for a moment before it lifts. Inside the woodcarver's workshop, darkness loosens its hold. Shapes re-emerge, bench, tools, shelves lined with finished pieces. The old man wakes slowly, as he has done so many dawns, letting his breath steady before swinging his legs over the side of the small bed in the back room. His joints complain at first, but the ache is familiar, almost comforting. He washes his face at the basin, cold water sharp and bracing, then dries it on a cloth faded soft from years of use. Outside, The village murmurs awake, low voices, a wooden shutter creaking open, the clink of pail against well stone. Before breaking bread, he steps to the bench. The candle, now just a nub of wax, sits where he left it. The spoon, spindle, heddle rods, and small wooden horse wait, warm-toned in the rising light. He lifts each in turn, running a thumb along grain and edge, feeling for the smallest flaw that night's rest may have brought to notice. The spoon feels balanced, bowl smooth and handle gently curved. The spindle spins true on the bench, no wobble. The heddle rods, simple yet exact, lie in perfect parallel. And the horse, small, carved with care, mane lines catching morning light, seems almost to watch him back. From a small cloth bundle, he takes a piece of crusted bread, baked 2 days ago. He cuts it in half with a small knife whose handle too he once shaped. Bread alone would suffice, but he adds a wedge of hard cheese, its sharpness softened by age. He eats slowly, savoring each bite, letting it settle into his empty belly. This meal, plain yet complete, feels enough. Outside, the square grows brighter, mist lifting as sun warms the stone. Soon, as expected, the farmer comes, broad-shouldered, hands stained by soil, voice low from years of calling across fields. The farmer removes his cap in the doorway, gaze respectful. "Is it ready then?" he asks. The woodcarver lifts the spoon, places it in the farmer's hand. Fingers curl around the handle, testing weight and curve. The farmer turns it over, eyes tracing the grain, then nods. Feels right, strong, but light. They exchange few words. Years of quiet business need none. The farmer offers 2 copper coins and a nod of gratitude. The coins, worn smooth, join others in a small wooden bowl. But the real payment, the old man feels, is in the farmer's simple satisfaction. Next, the spindle's new owner arrives, the elder woman, wrapped in a shawl despite warming air. Her hands are marked by years of spinning, fingers bent but deft. She takes the spindle gently, spinning it lightly between thumb and forefinger. It rolls smoothly, whirl balanced. She smiles, small, but bright as morning sun. "Granddaughter will like this," she says. The woodcarver nods, warmed by the thought. As she leaves, her steps seem lighter, as though the spindle itself carries hope forward. Not long after, the weaver enters, dark hair braided, apron faintly marked with dye. She accepts the rods in both hands, running fingertips along their length. "Smooth," she murmurs, approving. She turns them, eyes checking for true lines. They'll carry the warp well. Coins change hands, but again, the moment of shared respect feels more precious. A nod, a faint smile, and she departs, rods tucked under arm like slender promise. Then comes the visit the old man most awaited. The boy. Yesterday, wide-eyed, he watched as the horse neared completion. Now, he steps carefully into the workshop, small hands clasped before him. "May I see it?" he asks, voice shy but eager. The woodcarver lifts the horse, sets it into waiting hands. The boy's face lights as though dawn arrived anew. He turns the figure slowly, tracing mane and legs. "It's beautiful," he whispers. The old man kneels, joints protesting, to meet the boy's eyes. "Do you feel where the mane's lines run?" he asks. The boy nods. "Remember," the carver says softly, "a good piece shows what the wood wants to be, not just what your hands demand." The boy listens, holding the horse close. No coin changes hands this time. Instead, a thank you spoken with quiet sincerity, enough to warm the old man's chest more than silver ever could. After the visitors leave, quiet returns. The square, fully awake now, hums with gentle movement. A woman crossing with basket of bread, 2 children chasing each other near the well, a cart rolling over cobbles. The woodcarver remains in the doorway, watching. The day has begun its new course, and his part in it, small but honest, feels complete. His bench, once crowded with tasks, now holds only tools, neatly laid. The shelf above bears fewer pieces, ready for tomorrow. He reflects on what remains after the last piece is carved. Not fame, not fortune, but usefulness, beauty, kindness, small offerings shaped into wood and shared. The bowl that stirs soup, the spindle that twists thread, the toy that sparks a child's dream. Even as hands weaken, these offerings endure. They may not last forever, but for a while, they carry warmth into lives not yet lived. He steps to the threshold once more. Sunlight now lies full on the square, warming the stone. The dog that slept on church steps stretches, tail wagging. Birds hop and peck near spilled grain. The rhythm of village life continues, unchanged, yet ever new. He feels his own breath fall into step with it. Years teach that each morning is both return and beginning. His mind drifts beyond the square, over fields to the edge of the old forest. There, trees stand in quiet congregation, roots entwined in dark earth. In youth, he feared their shadows. In age, he sees their gift. Each branch, each trunk, carries potential, bowl, spindle, toy. Yet the forest gives only what can be taken with respect. Leave living wood in peace, his father once taught. Take only what wind and time have already offered. In these words, a simple creed, craft joined with humility. He knows evening will return soon enough. Children's laughter will soften into yawns. Windows will glow with hearth light. The candle in his workshop will burn once more. Yet he feels no sorrow in the days passing. Each dawn brings new work, new visitors, new chances to shape kindness. Even as strength wanes, intention remains. Before closing the workshop for the day, he places the small horse back on the shelf. Tomorrow may bring another child, another promise, or not. What matters is that each piece, shaped slowly and sincerely, stands ready. That readiness he feels is his truest gift. The square now hums with midday warmth. Voices rise and fall, carts rumble, pigeons flutter. The woodcarver standing in the doorway breathes deeply. He feels both inside and outside the life that surrounds him. One hand on the doorframe, he whispers, barely aloud, "Enough. And thank you." Then he steps back, gently closes the door. Inside, light filters through the small window, falling in soft lines across wood and bench. To you, who have listened quietly beside this old bench, close your eyes. Feel the smooth curve of a wooden spoon in hand. Hear the faint rasp of blade over grain. Smell oil warming under careful fingers. See the small toy horse, ready to gallop in a child's dream. Let your breath slow, soft as falling shavings. In this quiet, there is space for sleep. In this story of craft and care, find your own gentle rest.